The information provided on Terminal Addiction Podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for professional medical or mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, licensed therapist, or other qualified provider with any questions you might have regarding medical or mental health condition. Never disregard professional advice or delay seeking it because of something you heard on this podcast. The views and opinions expressed by the guests, the hosts, are their own, and they do not necessarily reflect those of any affiliated organization or institutions. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, we make no guarantee regarding the completeness, reliability, or applicability of the content discussed. Listening to this podcast does not establish provider-patient relationship. If you're experiencing a medical emergency or mental health crisis, please contact emergency services or crisis line immediately.
All right, welcome back to the Terminal Addiction Podcast. My name is Doug A.
And I'm Paul B.
And we are still sitting here with our guest, Casey. Casey, how you doing?
Still doing good.
All right, good. So for everybody else, it's been 2 weeks, but for us, it's been like 4 minutes. So I think we wanted to finish up and hear a little bit more about your story and what life looks like now, what your program resembles. Just what's different this time compared to the first go round for you.
Okay, so when I got back into the rooms from my relapse, I worked the steps again. I worked it the first time. I had quite a few different sponsors until I found one who took me through the steps, and it was a very fast process. But I feel like I really needed that at the time. There was definitely a lot of stuff I left out, though, that I wasn't ready to tackle, and I definitely think that added to my relapse. Going into that, so when I got back in the rooms, I found a woman who I deeply admire as my sponsor. Just had a lot of stuff in common, and the way that she spoke about things really struck something with me. So I went through the steps with her, and I feel like during those steps I spent a lot of time on 6 and 7, looking at my character defects. Definitely, I really didn't spend a lot of time on that the first time. I remember just reading it and going through it and not really thinking about what that meant and what that means in my recovery. So I still really try to look at those every day. And I did an amends with a boss that I had stolen money from that I really was putting off, that I did not want to do. I felt like a lot of it was because admitting stuff too. To my knowledge, all of it was pretty much well known. I know that from the amends, but making that and being honest and sitting in front of someone and saying the things that I did and not carrying it alone anymore was felt like a spiritual awakening for sure. The weight after getting that off and feeling like I no longer have to carry it because I was doing my attempt through my higher power to make it right. So I did that, and just a lot of meetings. I mean, I still go to at least, I have 11 months right now, and I still go to at least probably a meeting every day, if not 6 days a week, and a lot of time, like 2 meetings a day. And I actually just took over a meeting for Paul here with a good friend of mine, and I've been given a few opportunities like that, and having that accountability was something that really scared me at first, but has been so important to my recovery, because I think it scared me a lot in the beginning too, because I'm still having a hard time like kind of grasping where I'm at right now in my life and the things that I'm doing. I not regretting the past or wanting to shut the door on it, but it's still like I've talked about a lot in meetings, like having this sense of like imposter syndrome, like this isn't my life and someone's kind of just like doing all the stuff and I'm just like getting to like experience it. And I know that's my higher power and it's really cool, but trusting myself in that and allowing other people to trust me in those situations is just a promise from this program, I think, and finally accepting that. And getting the opportunity to help people like I was helped is what that meeting has done for me. And I'm really grateful for that. I've also been working with a few other people now in my sobriety to try and get a lot of people together to do like sober fun activities, which I think is really important for anyone in sobriety. Especially, I mean, at my age, like a lot of people are still, like I still have friends that drink every once in a while, but I don't spend time with them when they're doing that stuff. So especially in the beginning, there was like not a lot I was doing other than recovery and work. And I just finished my first year of college, which was amazing. An experience I never thought I would ever honestly do. So getting together with sober friends and doing stuff that I never thought I'd like, but figuring out things that I like to do. Like, I never felt like I had a personality before I got sober, really. I never knew what I liked to do. I never knew anything other than just drinking and using drugs. And if that wasn't involved, I couldn't converse with someone. I couldn't even feel like a person. So I feel like I'm just learning a lot about myself and figuring out who I am in that.
So one of the reasons why you got the meeting after me having it for, I think, 4 years, I had been looking for years, going back at least 2 or 3 years, for someone to kind of step up and help out and eventually take over, because I had some other things that I was wanting to work on. And when I saw you and Alex, and I talked to other people in the sober community before I handed it over to 2 people that had less than a year's sobriety. But I the way that I've seen you grow and the way I've seen Alex grow over that time has been amazing. And I think to attest to that, when you did your lead the other night, you had packed the house and it was standing room only. So, I mean, you're able to draw some things that this 61-year-old guy can't draw. So, it was a natural progression for me. There were a couple other people that I considered. But when it really came down to it, it was like, okay, who's going to keep this meeting going? Who's going to grow it? And, you got a meeting that was doing pretty well. And to be able to make it grow even more, I took that decision very seriously.
Yeah, and I remember Paul kind of brought it up to me, and I threw out some other names, and we talked about it. And Casey here and Alex as well were the 2 that were like, this is the next generation. I think sometimes I look around at a room, and it's like, oh fuck, our old timers are getting old. And I look over the other side of the room, and it's like, then there's that next batch that are going to be the old timers. And it was like, okay, we're okay. Yeah. And then it was like, fuck. And then I look over here, and it's like, then I see these young folks like 30 and under, getting clean, getting sober, getting their shit together. And, that's motivating for Paul and I, and for the rest of the people in the meetings, to just look around and go like, we're going to be okay. I don't think we're going to have to go through any lean years. There are some, veterans, old timers around here that are, getting up into their 80s. And I know that they want to make sure that they're leaving a legacy. They're passing along what they know. And then there's a whole batch that are kind of, that 5 to 20 years sober. But then it's, we got to look around and see who's going to be coming up, next. And there's this whole batch around this area, of these like 30, 35 and under, crowd that are getting it. And it's really cool for Paul and I to be able to sit back and see that, and just know that our instincts are right, and know that the people that we're given this responsibility to aren't taking it lightly, but they're also having fun with it, if that makes sense. So I know it's one of the things that we want to make sure and do is just make sure that this program is in good hands as it moves forward.
Yeah, and with the Saturday meeting, it was always, I don't care if you have 30 years, 40 years sobriety, or if you have 2 weeks sobriety, I'm going to learn something from each of you. And so I'm glad that I'm able to keep that going in the meeting with, people that have a little less sobriety, but, still are very, very important in the community.
Yeah, and somewhere along the way, I heard somebody say, don't count the days, but make the days count.
Yeah.
And to see people who are, younger, who are making the most of this, and somewhere else I heard, sobriety is the act of saying no. No, I won't have that drink. No, I'm not going to get high. No, I'm not going to go out. No, I'm not going to go to that family get together. But no is exhausting. And no is a lot of negative energy that I'm putting into my sobriety. Recovery, on the other hand, is saying yes to other things. Yes to service work. Yes to going back to school. Yes to change in careers. And yes is what feeds the soul, and it feeds recovery, because if life wasn't better drinking, or if life wasn't better sober, I'd still be drinking. But it took a while, and it took a lot of no's before I was able to get to a point where I could start saying yes to things. And when you were telling me you were going back to school, Casey, I thought that was super cool. Little different path, but kind of the same thing I'm doing right now. And I know how important that is to me in my recovery. Cause I got so much going on right now. Like, I hate to say it, I don't have time to start drinking and using again. Like, yeah. I'm so busy. I'm so busy enjoying my sobriety and my recovery that, like, I don't want to do anything to jeopardize it. I don't want to go back to where I was. I don't want to have to ever, tell somebody I got a day or a week or a month sober ever again. And so a lot of the things that I'm doing these days, feeds the recovery aspect as much as it feeds the sobriety. Because everything I'm doing now, it all goes away if I pick up and start drinking and using again. So I've got that, somewhere in the back of my head, but I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying, I never thought I'd say this. I'm enjoying being back in school. And I'm enjoying, the benefits, the stuff that I would have never put down on paper. If somebody said, what do you want your sobriety and recovery to look like? I'm enjoying things that I would have never even put on that paper. Cause there's just so much cool stuff that just happens every day if I'm paying attention and if I'm present and if I'm in the middle of that boat. And, but if I'm, not going to meetings, if I'm not hanging around with people, if I'm not hanging out with Paul and other sober supports, I get stuck in my head a lot. I get stuck in there with those demons again.
Yeah. And talking about demons. So I want to back up a little bit. So growing up, alcohol was never an issue. In my family, we would have a glass of wine, with dinner, and that started when I was a toddler. And my parents always kept an unlocked liquor cabinet. By the time I was 10, I was bartending for my dad's parties. And, it was the demons that really got me. And I've said it before in here that alcohol was the medicine. There were things that happened in my career early on, going back over 30 years, that started haunting me at night. And, over time, sleep became less and less. I was originally working 24-hour shifts. 24 hours on, 48 hours off, which is really hard on the brain and on the body. And, I've talked to both of you about an incident that came back as I was recounting something that happened 23 years ago. Very tragic situation. And so I was finding that I was sleeping less and less every night. And in order to fix that, or to put a Band-Aid on it, I started drinking more and more. And my mom was a recovering alcoholic the last 10 years of her life. She was sober. And so I had seen that, but I always thought, okay, that's her problem. I don't have to deal with that. My problem is I can't sleep. I tried taking benzodiazepines. I tried taking, Ambien and all that stuff, but I was always drinking. And, it went from, okay, maybe I'm getting a couple hours sleep to, oh, I'm getting 15 minutes of sleep a night, and drinking in between. So I was literally drinking around the clock, with these little 15, 20-minute naps, throughout the day. And it wasn't until I started revisiting some of those demons that I was able to get sober. Stopping drinking wasn't the biggest issue. It was dealing with all the other stuff that was going on in my head. To this day, I still don't sleep that great, but I'll take a 5-hour sleep over sleeping 15 minutes anytime. And Casey, I've talked to you. I know you've got some demons in your background too. It's not important that you share them, but was that part of your addiction as well?
Yes. For me, yes. I feel comfortable sharing a lot of it now, actually, since I've worked through a lot of it. I was 16 years old, and it was like the first time I had drank and blacked out, and it ended with like a sexual assault by like 5 other guys, and it was kind of figured out by the school and like concerned parents. So my parents figured out about it a little later, and that's kind of when therapy started for me at a young age. I never really dealt with it at the time. I didn't know how to, and my parents both worked a lot, and I had a lot of siblings, and just a lot going on always, but I personally never wanted to talk about it or deal with it, because if I did that, it made it real. So that's definitely in high school. I started experimenting with a lot of other drugs after that happened, and drinking a lot. And since that was like my first time ever drinking heavily, like, I don't know if that was like the progression of it, but I definitely remember the thoughts and feelings that I had following it. And actually, when I got sober for the first time, a lot of those, I struggle with like PTSD and like flashbacks and stuff like that. So, a lot of that was happening like right away for me when I stopped drinking. So I was about a month and a half sober when I started doing EMDR, with my therapist. And I remember talking about it a little with my support group, and people saying that I should focus on my sobriety. But for me, which I was, like, cause I needed that to be able to be sober. Living with all of that anxiety, which I still have a lot today, but nothing like it was before I went through it with a professional and started to heal and accept that those things did happen. And it got lighter when I started working on it. And I mean, I'm sitting here talking about it today, which is something I've never done really before in a space. So I definitely think outside help was a really big thing for me for that.
Yeah, and I turned to therapy as well. I practice meditation every night, and that's how I get to sleep every night. We have the tools now. We talk a lot in recovery about building your toolbox. Those are all things that I put in my toolboxes. Being able to turn to somebody else. When I was haunted by the incident that happened 23 years ago, I called you. I know today that I can't just bottle those things up, because that just leads me back to those destructive behaviors that I had before. And, it's just learning how to deal with it differently.
Yeah. And I know for me, I'm a big advocate of therapy. Casey mentioned in the first episode, collecting therapists, and I'd forgotten I had done that a little bit. I don't like starting therapy, but I like being in therapy. I always, joke around like I should just make a PowerPoint and just give it to them, but I'm sure that's another diagnosis by itself. But once I was able to get in with a good therapist again, I'm able to talk about things. I'm able to, not be told what to do, but my therapist gives me guidance and suggestions, and lets me figure out my own answers, because there's still a lot of demons that run around inside my head. And a lot of those things have been present, before I started drinking and using. The drinking and using just exacerbated things and sped things up and made things a lot worse. And yeah, Paul just pulled out the DSM-5, and I think I probably qualify for about a third of that book. But, I found a cool quote from, an author, Charles Bukowski, who's probably a very hardcore alcoholic himself, but, don't fight your demons. Your demons are here to teach you lessons. Sit down with your demons and have a drink. Maybe not for us, but, and chat about their names and talk about the burns on their fingers and scratches on their ankles. Some of them are actually very nice. And I got to a point with all this stuff that my my demons don't scare me as much as they used to. I'm able to recognize them. I'm able to put names to them. And a lot of that actually came from working steps. When I got into like 5, 6, 7, in the AA 12 steps, learning about those character defects and those shortcomings, those were a lot of my demons. And that stuff is still there. I'm just able to recognize it and identify it when it pops up. And I'm able to like pull that off the shelf and re-examine it and then put it back on the shelf. But for me, the anxiety, the depression, I'm just somebody who just always has this like underlining sorrow. And I think part of, being me is just constantly having this, this dark tinge to a lot of things. I'm not, suicidal or depressed in that regard, but it's just, I think I've lived enough, I've seen enough, I've heard enough, that I just kind of know that there's just this melancholy that just sort of exists, through the fabric of life. And I'm not afraid of it anymore. I'm not trying to drink it away. I'm not trying to run from it. I accept it. I lean into it. And I try to understand it, because I really do think that all this stuff in our lives is there to teach us. Anxiety is there to teach us. Fear is there to teach us. Any of the self-sabotage kind of behaviors are there to try to teach us. So for me, it was just like inviting them in. And through meditation, I was able to start doing that and just sit with a feeling and not let the feeling become overwhelming. And sit there and feel it and remember it and work through it that way. And so whether it's EDMR, or just counseling or therapy or meditation or just talking about this stuff, there is, an extreme weight that's lifted when I share my stuff with people. And I find that other people relate to it and they get it and they've gone through things very similarly. And then trying to find the purpose for this, a lot of these demons in my life are there so that I can learn and so that I can, work on things myself so that when the time comes, I'm able to help somebody else. And I think that was a big part of it for me is, when I first got sober and went to treatment, and when I first got sober and came into the rooms, like I didn't want to talk about any of this stuff. And it was still just like boring a hole in my head. And it wasn't until I started talking about this stuff that I started sleeping better. It wasn't until I started talking about this stuff that I was able to make more connections with people and find out that, I'm not the only one. Because, I had a therapist say, like, if it has a name, somebody else has done it before. And so I'm not the only one that's ever felt or thought or believed all this stuff. But if I keep it buried inside, it's never going to get any better. And it wasn't until I was able to start talking about it either individually or in therapy or in groups, that I was able to, start the healing process. And then at some point, it becomes easier for me to talk about it. And then one time I talk about it and I find out that it's helping somebody else. And that was just a really cool, spiritual moment when I realized that like, oh, all the shit that I went through might be so that I can help somebody else go through something similar.
Yeah. And I think I've brought this up in the podcast as well, is that, I've never been able to have a craving and talk about it at the same time. So just by talking about it takes some of the energy out of it.
Yeah, I think that's extremely beneficial for me to remember, because I can still get bogged down and wrapped up in all the shit that's going on in the world these days and get inundated with fear, opportunities to just lean into that fear every day. But for me, I got to remember to talk about it. I got to remember to share it. And I got to remember to be open to listening to other people when they offer suggestions on how they got through it. And for me, that was working with a good sponsor, working with really good sober supports. And at some point, like, I don't care if people know this stuff about me, because I need to know this stuff about me. And it was more of just a fringe benefit that somebody else was starting to get help from it. But I find that this stuff is still there. And it's a lot quieter. It's a lot smaller. But it's also a lot more subtle and sneaky than it used to be. And it can come up and get me when I'm not paying attention. So for me, it's a lot of continuing to go to therapy, continuing to work with newcomers, because that's just an opportunity for me to help somebody, whether it's with alcohol and drugs or with other mental health stuff. But if I'm not present, if I'm not putting myself around those kinds of people, all that stuff is still in me, and it just builds and grows and gets stronger and uglier and meaner. So
any final words of wisdom, Casey? Especially for the newcomer.
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell the person who's thinking about getting sober and one of your peers? What kind of advice would you give them?
I feel like my favorite thing that I hear a lot is waiting for the miracle to happen. I remember just being early in sobriety and like things changing and feeling better, but I still felt like it was like me trying to control the situation of I'm not feeling good enough. It's not happening fast enough. And I felt like that kind of led to my relapse. And now this time around, I'm so glad that it happened just because I know that I am powerless over alcohol, and I personally need to take suggestions from people and not twist them the way that I did it in the beginning, instead of take the full suggestion to get the full result if it works for me. So, yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. It has been so good talking to you for the last hour, 2 half-hour segments, but in the last hour. And you and I talk a lot. I always learn something new. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm glad we decided to have you on here, Casey. I appreciate seeing you at meetings and all the work that you're doing. And, even if we don't talk as often as you and Paul do, you're definitely one of the people that I just keep an eye on. And when I hear people say like, "Oh, I got Casey's number," I'm like, you're fine. Just stick around. Just stay with and, don't let go of things. So, thank you again for joining us here on Terminal Addiction Podcast. And we'll maybe have her on again.
Yeah. I
see
think
how
that'd
things
be good.
go down the road. So
Thank you guys so much for having me.
yeah, thank you, Casey. So, Paul, anything?
Well, I think we're about to wrap, and so from the Upper Doghouse Studios, I think that's a wrap.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of any affiliated organization. This content is for informational purposes only and is not intended for professional advice. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. Until next time.